Okay, so this lesson is going to be an extension of the last one dealing with market equilibrium. What we want to look at real quick is how the market corrects itself, okay, when there's a shift in either supply and demand. And so currently we're sitting here at a price of $3 as our equilibrium price and a quantity of $40. And so we want to look at instances where we have either excess demand or excess supply. All right. And so let's pretend that something happened that caused the supply curve to shift to the right. That would be an increase in supply, which causes the price to come down to $2. Okay? And so we know that if the price is still sitting here at $3, we know that the market clearing price, the market clearing quantity is 40. And so what would happen if 20 more suddenly appeared? So here we are at 40. If 20 more suddenly appeared on the shelves, okay? That means that there would be too many. We would have a surplus, or what they would call an excess supply. And so in order to clear the market, and that's what producers or businesses want to do, they want to clear the market. In order to get consumers to buy those extra 20, what are they going to have to do to the price, which is $3 right now, to get the market to clear? And so we know that if they want to sell 60 of them, we need to figure out uh, that if there's 60, what price would the producer or the stores have to offer in order for all 60 to be bought? And so if you come up here until you hit the demand curve, you can see that that's at $2. And this is the equilibrium price and quantity. So when there's a shift in supply to the right, we would say that there's an excess of supply. More of it came onto the market than was there originally. And at the current price, the current higher price of $3, we're going to end up with a surplus of 20. And so in order to clear the market, the price is going to work itself lower. The people, the stores that have the extras on their shelf know that they're going to have to lower the price in order to clear the shelves. Okay, and so that would be an instance of an excess supply. So let me see. I'm going to have to go backwards here just a bit. The next thing we want to look at is what if there's an increase in demand? Okay, so a shift of the demand curve to the right. All right, how's that going to look graphically? And I will get there shortly. I think I'm close. What's going to happen graphically, and how is the market going to clear itself? Oh Lord, still got all these. Apologize. Should have copied and pasted. And there we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's say now that oops, it's still going. Supply. Supply. Okay, so let's say that something happens now, and there's an increase in the demand for a product. All right, and so now, okay, remember our original quantity was 40, so the original quantity equals 40, and so now the demand goes up. So at $3, now we actually want a lot more at $3. We want, something like 70. Okay, but the problem is they don't have 70, and so the producers will give us some more. But right now, at $3, we want a lot more. This would be our new equilibrium quantity. So say it's 50. So at $4, it's the new amount that we want is 50. So the price went up, and so at $3, we would buy them out. Okay, if there were 50 on the shelves, at $3 we would buy them out, and so because at $3 we want, let's see, if it increased, we would want 70, and so there would be a shortage, and so we would say that this is the excess. Well, I'm sorry, back that up. So our new equilibrium quantity is 50. We want 70 at $3, and so the businesses are going to have to say, okay, if we only have 50 sitting on the shelf, what do we need to raise the price to where everybody's happy? And so you can see that it would be $4, and so that's what eventually happens as the demand increases. We end up with an excess demand or shortage. And so through that shortage, that causes the producers to increase the price, and now it's a market clearing price that goes up. And so that's the mechanism that works when there's either excess supply or demand, and it works in the opposite way as well. this is going to get messy here, but just bear with me for a second. Let's say the supply shifted back this way from here. Okay, the price went up. Now we're going to have, we had 40, the quantity that was being bought. Then we had a shift in supply, and so now there's not a whole lot. And so now we have not excess supply, but a shortage. So it would be the same situation here. And so if there's less on the shelf, so instead of 40, let's say there's 10, okay, you have 40 people showing up, but there's only 10 products, and so what you need to do is raise the price up, okay, to whatever that needs to be. I'm not sure if those numbers jived or not, but anyway, so this is what we mean by excess demand or excess supply. If there's an increase in supply, so an excess supply is brought on, increase in supply, or you could say a decrease in demand. Okay, so if the demand shifts back to the left, then that means we don't want as much as there currently is, and so there's too much of it, so that's going to drive the price down. Excess demand would be, let me erase this. This is getting a bit jumbled, but so an excess demand would be either an increase in demand or a decrease in supply. And so either of those things, the quantity, there's not going to be enough quantity, and so the price is going to go up. All right, so let's make sure you're familiar with these two terms, excess demand and excess supply, and how that mechanism, when one of those curves shifts, drives either the price up or the price down because of either the excess demand or supply. So what I want to do now is not that. I want to go over a couple of examples. And so as we go through this, it'll be helpful to have a piece of paper out. And I want you to practice these. This is where it's similar to math. The more you practice these, the better it becomes, the easier it becomes. And so when I put a new, I think I got 4 or 5 of these. When I put a new one up, I want you to, you don't have to copy it down word for word, but try and graph this out on a paper. And so the things I want you to do is to draw the graph, show a shift of the curves, be able to state the determinant that's being affected, state determinant, what happens to the price, what happens to the quantity, and that should be it. Okay, so here's the first one. Try this, pause the video, and read it, and then try it for yourself. All right, so here's how you work this out. Pepsi lowers its price to 25 cents for a 2-liter jug of Pepsi. Depict the market for Coke 2-liter bottles. And so we'll start off, I'm going to start all these graphs off, price and quantity. Here's the supply, here's the demand. And so we know that Pepsi and Coke, they are competitors, all right? And so is this going to be a supply shift or a demand shift? And so when you think about the determinants, nothing's happening that's allowing them to produce either more or less Coca-Cola. And so this is going to be a demand. And since Coke and Pepsi are competitors, we would say that these two products are substitutes for one another. Right, that's the determinant that's going to be, or competitive demand. Remember, that's the other way we want to say it now. So they're in competitive demand, and so if the price of Pepsi goes down, if you go into the store and you see a Pepsi for 25 cents and a Coke for $1.50, obviously you're going to buy the Pepsi, and so your demand for the Coke is going to shift back to the left. And so I should have drawn these in right at the beginning. So here's our initial price for Coca-Cola. Here's our initial quantity. And so if the price of Pepsi goes down, this is the market for Coke. If the price of Pepsi goes down, then we would expect a decrease in the demand for Coca-Cola because they are the products are in a competitive demand. They are substitutes for one another. And so as that happens, when the demand goes down for Coca-Cola, we would expect to see the price come down for Coke and the quantity to come down as well. All right? And so that's how you solve that one. This is a change in demand because it is a shift of the demand curve, and it's a change in the quantity supplied because all we're doing is going from one point on the supply curve to the other. All right, next example. It's not there. There you go. Let me read it. I know my handwriting is terrible. A new technology allows banjo makers to produce banjos in half the time. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Depict the market for banjos. And so let's go ahead and draw this out. Just the Q and the P. Remember, this is how they all start out. Here's our demand curve. Here's the supply curve. There's our equilibrium price, our equilibrium quantity. And so new technology allows banjo makers to produce banjos in half the time. This is, the determinant is a change, that is not a triangle, a change in technology. And a change in technology is a supply curve shifter. And since they can produce it at half the time, we would say that that is a shift to the right of banjos. All right. And we're going to draw this. Here's our new price. Here's our new quantity. And so the price, if this technology comes about, the price of banjos, we would expect it to come down. We would expect the quantity of banjos to go up. This is a change in technology, which is a supply determinant. This is also a change in the supply of banjos, and a change in the quantity demanded of banjos. Again, quantity demanded because we're simply going from one spot on the demand curve to another. A change in supply because we are shifting the whole curve. All right. Next example, the new iPhone 5 is set to release in a month. Depict the market for the iPhone 4S. I think it's 4S. So go ahead and pause it and see if you can figure this one out. All right, so here's how we work this out. Again, start off with the graph. The supply curve is upward sloping, demand curve downward sloping. Here's our X marks the spot. This is our equilibrium. This is our equilibrium price, P1, and our equilibrium quantity, Q1. And so if this is, if we're talking about the 4S, iPhone 4S, this doesn't affect their ability to produce the iPhone 4S. Okay, actually we could argue that it is. Let's work on the demand side of it right now. Actually, we could do this two different ways while I'm looking at it. This is an interesting example. So let's say that in terms of the demand side, we'll have to do two graphs here, and I will try to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but we will do two graphs, and we'll just see, we'll put it on one. We will just see what happens. Like I say, when we do examples on tests and in homework, we're only going to move one curve, but I want you to see this is a decent real-world example. So in terms of demand, if you're in the market for a smartphone and you like the iPhone, are you going to go buy an iPhone 4S right now, or are you going to wait a month? And typically, most people will decide to wait a month because it's the new technology. You want to have the newest and the best and all that stuff. And so we would say that the demand for the iPhone 4S is going to shift back to the left because that is a change in tastes and preference. All right. Now, if that's the only thing that happens, then we would say the price comes down and the quantity comes down. All right. And so if ceteris paribus, we kept the supply curve the same, this would be a change in the quantity supplied and a change in demand causing a decrease in price and a decrease in the quantity. Now, the interesting point and the point that made me kind of sit back and think for a second is if you are Apple and you have a set number of factories, all right, and so if you decide to start switching over production from the iPhone 4 and starting to produce the iPhone 5, you're probably doing it in the same facility. We would make that assumption. And so what's going to happen to the supply of the iPhone 4S if more and more of the factories for Apple are making the iPhone 5? And that's when you would say, let me choose a different color here. That's when you would say, you know what, the supply, darn it, purple. The supply is going to shift back to the left because this is what you would call competitive supply. All right, by producing more of this, by definition, we can't produce as much of this. And so that, if we had the new demand curve there, then the supply would go this way. And so according to this graph, the price of the iPhone may go up from its original. We know that's not really the case, but the one thing we do know that we can say for sure is what's going to happen to the quantity. Because here's our new quantity, Q3. We know that the quantity, if the demand goes down, it's going to shift left, and if the supply goes down, it's going to shift left. All right, and we'll have some examples to where you have to depict, what's going to happen to the price and quantity given two things, and we know for sure the quantity's going down. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen to the price because, like I say, the supply curve could be drawn here, and the equilibrium price would be lower than the original, or it could be drawn here, and the equilibrium price could be higher than the original. You just don't know, but the one thing you can say for sure is that the quantity is going to go down. All right, so hope that didn't confuse too many people. All right. If it did, just forget the whole thing. Don't worry about it. All right, next one. A city builds bike lanes on all of its roads to pick the market for gasoline. All right. So go ahead and pause it and see if you can work this out. Okay. Let's go ahead and draw our supply and demand. We are going to assume that if the bike lanes get built, and this is an assumption that we would state if we were taking a test or something, that if bikes get built, more people are going to go ride their bikes to work, and less people are going to be driving. And so would this be a supply curve or a demand curve issue? And so if people are choosing bikes, this is really a change in people's tastes and preferences, okay? Because this is the market for, market for gasoline or petrol. So this is a change in people's taste and preference. And so because we are choosing to ride bikes, and you could make the argument this is a change in the price of related goods, but that's not a very good one. So this is, we'll say, a change in people's tastes and preferences. And so we would expect the demand for gasoline, since more people are riding bikes and fewer people driving cars, we don't need as much gas. So that would shift the demand curve to the left, and our price would be lower, and the amount of gasoline we buy would be lower. This is a good graph, just so you know, from 2000 market for gasoline in say 2009 or so, when the Great Recession hit, people's income went down generally, and so people started carpooling more, and so and other more fuel efficient things, and so if I'm not mistaken, I believe we saw a decrease in the price of gasoline because the demand overall went down. All right, I'll have to double check that, but that would be how you would look at a change in income. And this is the last one. The mad cow disease hits the United States cattle industry, forcing the slaughter of half of all cattle in the U.S. to pick the market for leather belts. All right, so go ahead and pause it. Okay, now we got the supply and demand, and put that there, put that there. And so if we're looking at leather belts, so if they have to slaughter the cows, I'm going to make the assumption that they can still use the hides of the cows for leather. That may be completely wrong, but seems like a reasonable assumption. So if they're slaughtering half the cows, that means that there's a big increase in hides that are available. And so what's going to happen to the price of hides? And so we could just draw the market here for hides. There's a supply and demand, price and quantity, increase in supply of hides, and so we have a decrease in the price of hides. Now, hides are one of the inputs into producing leather belts. So this would be a change in resource costs or input costs. And so if it's cheaper now to buy the hides, then what's that going to do to the supply of leather belts? So it's going to shift the supply curve to the right. So X marks the spot again. Take your pencil and draw your dotted line to the left. Put it back there and draw it down. So that gives you the new price and the new quantity. And so you can see that the price, remember this is 0, the price comes down for leather belts, and the quantity of leather belts would go up. So decrease in price, increase in quantity. Is this a change in supply or a change in demand? Okay, hopefully you would say this is a change in supply because we're shifting the curve. And then we would say that this is a change in demand because we're simply moving from one point to the other on the demand curve. So change in the quantity. I think I might have said that wrong, but this is a change in the quantity demanded because we're moving along the curve. So those are some of the examples. I think that's it. Yep. We will practice a whole bunch because this is important stuff to get. This will lead us into elasticity and several other things. So, all right, until next time.